terrible ways that we could ever harm another being. Because by them turning away from the Dharma or deciding, I never want to go back to that Dharma center again, for example, then there is no way that they can connect with the Dharma and make use of its methods and actually create virtue. And so we're actually cutting off all of the virtue that could possibly have been created by their connecting to and then practicing the Dharma. And if you really think about what that means for that person or that being karmically, actually it is worse than killing them. Because if you cut off someone's life, then that's one thing. But if you cut off even the possibility of their creating great virtue or great merit, think how much greater actually the negativity of such a thing is. And so we all should be very, very careful. This is actually a very important point, and this came up in my mind after the teaching had concluded. We are all here interacting with one another. At the Dharma centers, then, we all come together many, many times. And so, as that is the case, as we are always together, we should be so careful in the way that we interact with one another. And here I am speaking of even when one has a good motivation, but one is completely unskillful about the way one goes about it. Of course, if you don't even have a good motivation, and then you act in such ways that people are put off or angered or cut off their roots of virtue and so forth, of course, then that is just non-virtue through and through. Your motivation was non-virtuous, the outcome was non-virtuous. But even in the case of having a good motivation, we need to be careful to be so skillful, because even with a good motivation, we can still easily do seemingly small things, but that have this great result of angering someone when they are here trying to create virtue, or in the worst case, actually having them turn away and not wish to return, and so forth. So we always should be very careful, each and every one of us. And sometimes at the Dharma Center, it can be easy. It can be easy to slip into being too bossy or too overbearing. And sometimes even springing from a good motivation, we will slip into being out of harmony with our Sangha brothers and sisters. And we always need to consider their perspective and their point of view, their needs, and what would be in harmony with their faculties and so forth. So we need to be careful and guard against this kind of great fault. Because as one who has made connection with the Dharma, then one of the greatest ways you can benefit another being is to help them make connection with the Dharma, or help them be able to enter the path of Dharma. That is like the greatest service that you could render to someone. But by that same token, then, the greatest harm that you could bring them is to cause obstacles to their Dharma practice, including the obstacle of being angry at you for being unskillful in the context of the Dharma Center. So keep that in mind, and always be so careful. You want to be very sure that you are not making obstacles to or cutting off another's opportunity for accumulating virtue and the roots of virtue, because this is a very, very great fault. And as we are trying, as it mentions in this chapter, to give rise to bodhicitta and to give rise to compassion, then we want to make sure that we are not inadvertently causing non-virtue to arise in others' mind out of our own ignorance or our own insensitivity or lack of consideration for others. So always try and be very careful with regards to this, and always examine your own behavior, and even in your impulse to be helpful or to be useful, make sure that you are doing so in a way that is really in harmony with that person, and that is going to actually be of use to them according to what they need and their faculties and so forth. So this came up for me after the teaching had concluded, and so I wanted to share that as well. That was it.
Thank you.
And also, I just wanted to mention, I spoke with Gyaltsen Rinpoche at lunchtime today, and he asked about the teachings and wanted to know who was there. He makes me list everybody. I always have to sit here trying to remember where everybody was sitting and how many people there were. And he was very glad that the teachings are continuing. And he asked about the topic, and I said that we had finished the chapter on refuge yesterday, and we had started the chapter on bodhicitta today. And he said, oh, good. He says, that's good. He says, tell them I really hope they are listening, and not just listening with their ears, listening with their mind and their heart, and then take that in and think about it again and again. He says, refuge and bodhicitta, you need them with you Always, all the time. Don't put down your refuge and bodhicitta. Don't leave them anywhere. Always keep them with you. And he was really happy. He said, tell them, listen and pay attention.
Thank you. 주지시. 되는지 또 남쪽이. 저 건다연나 같은 경우도 받았어요. 네, 대단 났을 것 같아요. 맞죠? 그냥 나라 다 나왔는데.
Wasn't enough I wanted you to go like another 4 hours.
Okay.
Just I'm starting on that side. Some other time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.